region, and this transfer occurred on the 14th of June 2024 at 3:21 p.m. So the record is there. It's not a doubt. It's verifiable. We went on further and looked at the transaction history of this particular voter within our database. He was enrolled on the 27th of July 2020 at 10:19 a.m. at the True Vine Preparatory School, JHS, near Boyman, with polling station number C150704. This gentleman, on the 22nd of October 2020, at 4:35 p.m., registered for special voting and was moved to the Achimota College Police Station, C1502 SPS. That is a special police station that he registered for him to take part in special voting. On the 4th of January 2023, the system will do a reversal. Now, the reversal that the system does is because special voting is not permanent. And therefore, when we finish the election, the system will reverse you back to where originally you came from. And therefore, once again, this is not an illegality, but it's a system process that has been executed, right? And so, on the 14th of June, he himself decided that he was relocating and therefore transferred to DAJHS Mite. And it's a legal transfer. There are no qualms with it. Now, when you look into that same individual, is there. It's listed there as the police station. He's not been deleted. He's where he's supposed to be. If you look at the register there too, there he is in the register. Once again, he's not deleted. He's there where he's supposed to. If you look at the transferred votes, you see there. He was transferred to from, and this is where originally he was. Let's say it's relocation, and this is the name of the individual. So once again, this is not a deletion, it is a transfer. And so you can't say that a voter has been deleted, right? And to prove that, or here is the actual form that the individual filled. And this is the actual hard record, paper record of the individual. He filled it, he signed it, that is his signature. So this person has not been deleted. This person has transferred. You can't say that somebody has transferred and therefore is deleted. It would have been good if we had all the other data, the 3,557, and I'm sure would have confirmed that all these things were correct and properly done. Unfortunately, we don't have it, so we can't speak to it. We can only speak to what we have available. But if indeed this is a sample, then it's fair enough for us to extend this and say that all the 3,957 so-called voters were not deleted, and they are actually in the register and have probably done transfer by themselves. But let's carry on. Still, don't worry, you have access to it later. You have access to it later, okay? So, same on observation 1. They also gave us 5 voter IDs that they claim had been deleted from the register. So fortunately, the voter IDs were there, so we could search for them. So that's exactly what we did. We searched for them. And so these are the alleged voter IDs. These people, we don't have a record of them having been transferred. And you know why we don't have a record of them having ever been transferred? Because in order for you to be transferred, you have to be a valid voter. If you are not a valid voter, remember the processes that I described to you. You have to go to the police, to their registration center, be verified biometrically before the transfer can occur. If you don't do that, the transfer doesn't occur. Okay? Now, these individuals that they listed as having been deleted by transfer, there's no record of a transfer for them. What we found out was that these individuals had corrupt biometrics, so they were never in the register in the first place. And therefore, how do they get transferred? So once again, it's weird that they will be said to have been illegally deleted by a transfer, when indeed they weren't even available for a transfer. And I'm sure that if we look at all the other IDs that were submitted, we'll probably come to the same conclusion. It will interest you to note that these corrupt biometrics actually came from the same kit. The kit number GN1297 was where the registration occurred. And it was an offline registration. Remember, I said offline registrations are prone to some of these problems. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, nobody has deleted anybody. These are issues that have arrived. And prior to this, we had a list of all the individuals who had corrupt biometrics. And the commission had taken a step right down to the district level and had committed resources to get people to go and find them. Fortunately, we had some of them, we had their telephone numbers. So we could call them and ask them to come for inclusion. And this is because their biometrics were corrupt. It's not that they've been deleted. It's a biometric register. If you don't have biometrics, you cannot be on it. So nobody has deleted anybody. So observation 2 says that 2,094 voters were transferred to different polling stations, but do not exist on the absent voter list. And examples were given. A case reference was given. The ID number of the voter was 2244022410. Now, the person currently now is in the central region, in Methodist Church, Ubunche. Pardon me, I may not get the spelling right. But transferred from Uti region, from Church of Pentecost, Chinderi. And we have the record of it. We've looked at the absent voter list that was submitted to the political parties, and indeed the absent voter list that was sent to the polling stations. And we can confirm that the absent voter list for that particular polling station was empty. And it was a correct observation. They had correctly picked up that there was an error. But we ourselves had already picked up that error, and a new list had been generated and sent to the various polling stations that were affected. Once again, remember that it is a process. We have systems, several systems querying the same databases. Sometimes errors occur in transit. And there are some of the errors that they've said that you see that there are data that is missing, but it's a human institution and errors occur. And so we are able to pick this up and fix those issues as they come. So I can confidently tell you that we have regenerated those registers and sent them back earlier on in the registration process. What you are seeing now is our register viewer, which gives us a panoramic view of everybody that is in the register. So we've zoomed down to this particular polling station, and the individual that they reference here now, as you can see, together with all the other people who should be on it, are there. And this is evidence that the issues that were raised, notwithstanding the NDC reporting it, things that we detected ourselves have been fixed. And if you look at the current register as it stands now, you will see that a lot of the issues have been fixed. It's an evolving process that will culminate into a final voters register, and therefore we should allow the processes to work. Observation 3, which says that previously transferred illegally, the previous transfers were illegally added to the 2024 transfers. I think that the Commission has already admitted to the fact that the transfers that were given, the transfer voter register that were given, contained much more than the numbers that were expected for the 2024 registration period. And I believe that Deputy Chair Dr. Bosman had even said this on the 2nd of September. It was inadvertently added, and what it did was that it added all the transactions, the transfers transactions that had occurred from 2020. So you had much more. And if you take a critical look at the transfer registers, you will see certain narratives like reversal of special transfers, because they are all considered one transfer or the other, but there are different categories of them. In generating them, all the transfers were added, including those from 2020. So you had 2020 transfers, you had 2023 transfers, you had 2024 transfers, that were added, including even special voting, was also added to it. This, as was said by Dr. Bosman, had been detected and the error had been corrected. So the new voter register that you are going to get will contain only transfers that were done for the 2024 season. Be that as it may, because of the uproar that was associated with it, the commission then went a step further and did further auditing of the transfer register. Basically, what was done was we asked all the paper records of transfers that were done to be reconciled against what was in the district viewer, so that we are sure that one for one, if you did do a transfer, you are in there. Obviously, we did encounter some problems in the sense that sometimes the transfers were not complete, once again, because of the network errors that we encountered. But those ones during the exhibition period, they were corrected. So it was a good exercise that was taken to ensure that those who had transferred their votes indeed will be where they are supposed to be on election day. Having also said that, we've also ensured that all the transfers that were done are legitimate and they are accurate. And so the absent voters list and the transfer voters list for the 2024 period will only contain those that were done for the 2024 period. Now we come to Pusiga, and I'm sure for those of us who have been listening to the news, we are aware that there are issues with transfers that occurred at Pusiga. These were reported to us by the regional director that 38 voters had been illegally transferred from Pusiga. And as I have said, this occurred because the Electoral Commission's own staff took advantage of a vulnerability that was in the system. And that vulnerability was the absence of a liveliness check. And so, him, as the narrative goes, in collusion with some other people, used the voter ID card, the picture on the voter ID card, to verify the individuals and do a transfer. Be that as it may, because our systems work, we were able to verify that indeed spoofing had occurred. And we've been able to pick up and confirm that indeed all the 38 people that were involved, whose transfers were done through this method. What have we done, having seen this discovery? The first step that we did was to ensure that we plugged that vulnerability. Fortunately, the technology has now matured such that it can be deployed into production use. So now we have made sure that facial verification now has a liveliness check put in place. We didn't stop there. We've also now implemented the liveliness check on our voter verification devices, our biometric verification. Indeed, you can't take somebody's picture, use the BVD to do verification, because now that is firmly built into the BVD as well. So we have plugged that hole. Subsequent to that, all those transfers that have been done have been reversed. So all those transfers that were done illegally have been reversed, and the perpetrators have been dismissed by the commission, and the police continues their investigation into the matter. We have not taken this matter lightly, and yes, so we have not taken this matter lightly at all, because once again, if it's happened somewhere, it is possible that it has happened elsewhere, and therefore we've engaged our service providers, and we are developing tools once again that will go through the system thoroughly to check and be sure that the same nefarious act has not been committed again. And by the end of the week, that report would be ready. But rest assured, the Commission is not taking this thing lightly at all. And we are making sure that we are making the systems better. There is no system in this world that is foolproof. For those of you who use even applications like Microsoft Office or even Microsoft Windows, periodically updates are issued. Why are updates issued? Updates are issued because it's supposed to block a vulnerability or it's supposed to fix a problem. And we as a commission, we are not static. We are constantly evolving. And we are hypercritical of ourselves. So we are looking at ways of improving the systems that we have built, both with our service providers and our software vendors. So rest assured, this issue is being given the best attention that it can get. Observation 4 says that about 15,000 unidentified transfer paths. Once again, we are not clear what is meant by path, because all the transfers are documented. And it is not the Commission's business to understand why somebody wants to transfer their vote, for so long as they are doing it in the proper way. So we do not understand what is meant by unidentified transfer path. But be it as it may, we went ahead and looked at the samples that they had given us. So in their presentation, there were 4 ID cards that were listed as people who did transfers, and there was no clear identified path for the transfer. We looked at them, and we can confirm that these ID cards, these ID numbers, that they said there was no clear identified path, had all done registrations or transfers at the time that we have listed there, and from what police station to the other. So these were legitimate transfers that were done. So we do not really understand what they mean by you can't identify the pathway of the transfer. So I will take one of them as a reference and show to you that indeed, if we want to identify the pathway that they undertook to get to where they are now, we can. So this is for voter with voter ID 47280266669. You bear with me that this is the picture. This is one of the pictures that has been listed as having an unidentified pathway. Now, as I've said, we record every transfer. Every transfer that is done is recorded, and it's recorded on 2 systems. It's recorded on our automatic biometric identification system, and it's recorded on the voter management system. So we have 2 records to compare at any point in time to confirm that a transfer was actually done. And in ABIS, we actually keep a picture, if it's a picture that you are using for the transfer, a picture that was taken at the time that the transfer was done to confirm, and that's to do the one-to-one matching. So if you look, this is the picture of the voter on the card, same picture here, and this is the picture that we have on record. Down here, you have the fingerprint of the individual. If the individual had used their fingerprint for verification, here you will have the verification listed here, together with the score, the hit score, to show that it is indeed the person. And here is the picture of the individual that did the transfer. So this transfer was not done in a vacuum. It was done by an individual, and there's evidence to show that indeed she presented herself to do that transfer. So the path is there. So we do not understand what is meant by there's no clear or there are unidentified paths towards a transfer. To give you further evidence, this is the transaction from our automated biometric identification system. That gives you the details of everything that was done, right down to the second that verification for transfer was executed. And once again, this data is available for verification. And I assure you, all the 330,000 something who did transfers, we have all their records available in our system for verification. Now, we go to the hard copy itself. And for this, I've put 2 of them here. So this is the individual, and this shows them. This is their voter ID card. This is where they are. This is the actual hard paper form that they completed for the transfer, together with their thumbprints and their signature, together with the officer who did the transfer. So there's nothing like unidentified transfer path. We know who you are, where you are, how you did the transfer, and where you are now. And we have both paper evidence and electronic evidence to support it. So it cannot be said that there's no identified pathway for the transfer. And so we've got 15,000 plus people who are affected. This is another individual from the previous pictures that I've shown to you. And this is the evidence that shows that that individual actually did the transfer. We move on to observation 5. And observation 5 says that there was 168 corrupt files. That indeed is true. It did happen. There were some of the files that were given in the provisional voters register that were not 1,685 corrupt files. And I'm saying that that observation indeed is accurate. We did have some correct files. As to whether it was 168, we are not sure. But we did have some corrupt files. And once again, these corrupt files came as a result of network interruptions that occurred during the production of those registers. These, as I've said, were promptly picked up by the commission staff. Because remember that at level 1, which is the hard inspection of the registers, hand, page by page, these things were detected and were reported to the commission, and immediately new ones were generated and sent back to the political parties. We, as I've said, we know for sure that there are electronic systems we are working with. They are not foolproof. Sometimes errors happen. So we've made it sure that on election day, this will not happen. What have we done? We have now generated additional tools that quality check all the outputs that come out of the register to ensure that they contain contents. And we are doing it at 3 different levels. At generation, and then we have 2 independent systems that are checking the registers as they are produced to be sure that they contain data. Any one that doesn't contain data is immediately flagged and will be regenerated. Having said that too, we also have the manual process of checking that will happen both at the commission before it goes to the printers and as the printers themselves as they are being printed, to ensure that we don't have these issues coming up. And so rest assured, come December 7th, the registers that will be sent to the polling stations will not have these issues in them. The last issue that was brought up was that there was an allegation, or let me not say an allegation, that the NDC had said that they had identified 50,000 dead people. It is important to note that there are processes governed by law that prescribes how to deal with these issues. And the Electoral Commission on its own cannot go and start deleting people from the register just because it's been said that the person is dead. It will interest you to note that during the exhibition exercises, certain individuals who had been objected to because they said they were dead actually showed up with their voter card in person. So it is not, we shouldn't take this lightly. Yes, if people are dead, there are processes that have been prescribed that allows us to remove them from the register, and those processes must be followed. And indeed, the Commission in Thinking Forward has since 2023 been collaborating with the Births and Deaths Registry to put in place a system that will aid it to proactively tackle some of these issues. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do this to completion, but that is something that is being worked upon. But I think that at the meeting, what Madam Chair said to the NDC was that if they had the evidence, they should bring it. it will be sent to electoral services. Electoral services has the mechanism to initiate some of these processes to see if indeed the people are dead or not. Unfortunately, even though we're given assurances that the names were coming, we never got it. And so nothing has been done about it, and rightly so, ladies and gentlemen. So that is with the issues that were raised by the National Democratic Congress. And as you can see, these are issues that have been dealt with. Some of them indeed are non-issues, but some of them were legitimate issues that were raised and fortunately had already been addressed or were addressed subsequently. Quickly, we'll look at some of the other issues that we identified during the process. This one I've already spoken about, the missing voter IDs. So you see an individual who has a valid voter ID card, but we can't find in our system. So this is a search for eligibility. It says he can't find a person in the system. So obviously this person is a missing voter, and the commission has committed enough resources to go out there and find those individuals, and through a process described as inclusion, add them to the register. We have been successful largely, but for those that we've not been able to identify, will be put on a list referred to as the missing voter. They are Form 1A and they are Form 1C at the polling stations on election day. And if they do show up, we will use that to confirm that the voter card that they have is actually valid, and then they will be allowed to vote. So that list will be made available at the end of the processes that we are currently undertaking. So all that will be made available. But just for statistics, in actual fact, the missing voter list affected 13 regions. For Ahafo, Central and Western North, we have not had any complaints of anybody missing. So these are the voter lists. It is stopped by the Northern region, followed by Western, Greater Accra, Uti, Volta, Upper West, Northwest, Bono, Savannah, Upper East, Eastern Ashanti, and the Bono East that have 1-1. The other things that we had was we had issues of people with different voter IDs. Now, as I've already said, sometimes you have people who register and they are missing, and then they go and register again. When it happens like that, they have different IDs, and the system will trap them. So for those individuals, once we find out that that has happened, we then replace the ID that they have, the last ID that they have. Otherwise, if they are holding another ID, they may assume that they are not on a register, when in actual fact, they exist on a register with a different voter ID. Accidental duplicates I've already mentioned about, so we had quite a number of them as well, which was fixed. So if you look here in our system, this is the active record of the person. So the person was moved off the multiples list and put onto the actual list. I've already said that we had issues of people who are appearing both on the provisional voter register and on the multiples list, when in actual fact they should be on the multiples list. And so that has been rectified as well. Last but not the least is errors in the names of individuals. During registration, unfortunately, sometimes at the point of entry data, the data entry clerks will put in unusual characters. Like, for instance, for this particular voter, I believe this is her birth date, but actually had been inputted in her other name section. You see other instances of funny characters being put in there, right? We were able to query our database and come up with all those who had that affliction. And indeed, we came up with 7,538. There was an active move to try and get these voters to come and have these errors corrected. Unfortunately, not all of them showed up. One of the issues that can potentially be a source of anxiety for a voter is when you appear on voting day and you can't find your name, and you can't find your name, not that you are not in the register, but your name, instead of an O, is a 0. So for instance, if you look at this particular polling station, which is in Karachi East, all the names that start are actually supposed to be a 0, but have been replaced, supposed to be an O, but have been replaced with a 0. And remember that your voter list is arranged in alphabetical order. So when a 0 appears first, it will be on top of the list. But if the election official is not aware of this and goes to look for your name at O, they may not find you there and say that you are absent from the voter register. And that might cause some anxiety. So this issue we can fix. But I think that it is something that has come up for discussion. And as stakeholders, we need to find out if this is something that the commission can on its own go ahead and fix, because it's an easy fix. You can easily, for instance, look at all the zeros that are in people's names and then convert them to an O. And that largely should fix majority of the problems. For some of them, it might be a little bit more difficult. But at least if you are able to fix the zeros, the rest that are left, we'll take our time and fix it. Having said that, it doesn't stop anybody from voting. Because remember that your ability to vote is by biometric verification. And the biometric verification does not know your name, does not know your age, does not know your date of birth. But it is essential that some of these errors are corrected so that it gives more credibility to the register that we have. So in conclusion, we have demonstrated to you that the Electoral Commission of Ghana has in place a tried and tested process to produce a credible register that ensures a free, fair, and transparent election. As has already been said, these are processes that have been used since 2020. In fact, in 2020, we produced a register under more dire conditions. We produced a register in 36 days in a COVID pandemic. And so we have learned a lot from that process. And it's the same processes that we are employing for the generation of this register. So like Madam Chair said, trust us to be able to deliver on a register that you will all be proud of. A register that does not disenfranchise anybody. The exhibition of the provisional voter register is indeed an audit on its own, and it involves all stakeholders, from political parties to voters to civil society organizations, the staff of the electoral commissions. The anomalies that have been identified have today been largely fixed, and we are waiting for the processes that are ongoing to be able to produce a final voter register. Once that work is complete, the hard work that over the last few weeks the Electoral Commission has been engaged in, we will be able to share at no additional cost to our stakeholders the ability for them to check the voter register electronically and allow for any changes to be made. I'd like to end by saying that the register that we have all strived hard to correct, currently as it stands now, is as cleanest as it will ever get. And it is robust, and it is ready for the 2020 election. Thank you very much. And I bring my presentation.